He said that the sex scene was going real explicit, and it was not. So I basically feel cheated. Not only did I not receive the fish dick that I was promised, but also the fish dick that I deserved. Also, he should have cast his movie better. There are two aspects to prejudice, that which focuses on negative beliefs and that on positive beliefs. For this video, we'll be focusing on the latter, benevolent prejudice, which is defined as prejudice that is expressed in terms of apparently positive beliefs and emotional responses. A modern example of this is benevolent misogynoir, which states that black women are strong, independent superwomen who don't need a man, whereas white women are pure, precious cinnamon rolls who are too good for this world. These may not sound like bad things because they're essentially compliments. These traits are positive, if not outright desirable, but research shows that benevolent and hostile prejudices are connected and encourage one another. Saying that black women are stronger than other women also says that they do not feel pain the way other women do. Maybe they don't feel at all, which serves as justification for the various ways our society mistreats them, including vilifying those who experience chronic pain or mental illness.
And you're not weak because you got help. I'm weak for not being there to help you get it.
Saying that white women are more precious than other women also says they're fragile and delicate, that they need to be protected from the evils of the world. And in media, as well as real life, that usually means especially from people of color. And if you were feeling left out, don't worry! Benevolent prejudice is here for everyone. Men, other genders, different ethnicities, disfigured and disabled people. If you exist, there's a positive stereotype out there just for you! Benevolent prejudice is also conditional. We celebrate you if you adhere to these stereotypes, and when you don't, you're shunned for it. Benevolent ableism tells people with disabilities and disfigurements that you are a wonder. And hostile ableism says you're an inspiration because you dared to inhabit a public space.
Do I look like him? I think I'd kill myself.
Paternalism is a key component of this kind of prejudice. Donald VanDeVeer defines paternalistic acts as those in which one person, A, interferes with another person, S, in order to promote S's own good. Paternalistic language has always been used to enforce oppressive power structures. It's what argued that slavery was a kind service for black people because they lacked the mental capacity for anything else. Look at how happy they are in Gone with the Wind. It was paternalism that said women shouldn't be allowed to vote because politics is hard and dirty, and women are not. Women, they're soft and pure and virtuous. Voting would break them. I know that sounds extreme, but we still use this language. It was used a lot in the comments on the Wonder video, which were so much fun to read. It was very bad. It was very stressful. Fun stuff like the lack of disfigured and disabled representation isn't because we hate them. No. It's because they're too fragile and incompetent to go outside. It costs too much money to hire them. And besides, it would be too traumatizing to play themselves on screen. And how dare you try and force them to do something they don't want to do? How can you be so heartless? Maybe you're the ableist one! You got me. I truly am history's greatest monster. How could I have presumed that all disfigured and disabled people in existence would want to be actors? Why would I argue that I know what's best for them? That's so paternalistic. That's probably why I didn't. I also never implied that in the previous video and didn't feel the need to clarify that because, quite frankly, the idea is preposterous and I didn't think I needed to. Look, if you're disfigured or disabled and you disagreed with my video, that's fine. I have ADHD, so while I'm not really completely out of the ballpark in the disability stadium, I'm certainly not in the infield. I'm more like the water person, chilling in the dugout. But it's definitely not my place to tell you how you should feel about these things. The water person doesn't lecture the infielders for how they're playing, they leave that to the other infielders. I'm more addressing the people cheering on the team in the stands. And that's the end of the baseball metaphor, folks. A lot of research went into the Wonder video, the majority of which came directly from people with disfigurements and disabilities. Yes, I wrote the script, but I didn't say anything that activists and academics haven't been saying for a long time. And while I saw feedback from people in these communities before I posted it, the video was really meant to be a crash course for people who weren't very familiar with the topic. The goal being that once they did become more aware, they could engage with the issue more directly. And to those abled and/or neurotypical people that left comments like this, I know that your heart is probably in the right place. Maybe you have a friend or a sibling who is disabled, or a child with a disfigurement, and you're wondering why what you see as just looking out for them might come across as condescending. Compassion is not a bad thing, and I personally don't want to live in a world where we do not care about the well-being of other people. But to quote Francesca Ramsey, intent does not absolve impact. And when you say things like, a disfigured child can't be an actor because they shouldn't endure the trauma of playing themselves, or disabled people have more important things to worry about than acting, you're saying that you believe that all people with disabilities and disfigurements are the same, and that you know what's best for every single one of those millions of people. That is paternalism and benevolent prejudice. For the record, I don't think that every disabled or disfigured person wants to act, just like I don't think that every person wants to act. I also don't think that every disabled or disfigured person would automatically be a great actor just by virtue of who they are. But they should be allowed to pursue that if they want to, and currently that is not something our abled society affords them. Research from the USC Annenberg looked at the top 100 theatrically released films of 2016 and found that of the characters that had speaking parts, 2.7% of them had a disability. 2.7. Disabled people are one of the largest minority groups in America, alright? They're nearly 20% of the population. 56.7 million people in America have a disability, and yet 2.7%. That's 124 characters out of 4,544, which is actually an improvement from 2015, which had 2.4%. And it's even worse for women. Of those 124 characters, only 32.3% of them were women. While female characters in films are still embarrassingly low across the board, disabled women face a twofold challenge of combined ableism and sexism that places an extra importance on physical perfection because they're women. According to Eileen Grubba, I've literally had people say to me, if you were a man, your limp wouldn't matter. To take it a step further, think of how many levels of discrimination disabled and disfigured women of color are having to fight against. No, not every disabled or disfigured actor is going to be comfortable playing a role like Joseph Merrick, or Augie, or Forrest Gump, or Tiny Tim. Yeah, he's here too. Not even secular Christmas magic ghosts get a pass. I'm coming for you, Robin. All of those roles are predicated on suffering because of their disability or disfigurement. And depending on an actor's individual experiences, it might, what is referred to in the industry as f***ing suck. But there's a difference between a role that is just uncomfortable and one that exploits trauma. Just FYI, this is what is meant by triggering. It's something that stirs up trauma and induces actually bad things like panic attacks and flashbacks. It's not when you see something mildly offensive. Besides, it's not like disabled and disfigured people are the only ones who have boundaries. Most actors don't perform their own stunts, and we don't criticize them for that. Body doubles for nude and sex scenes are another prominent example. There are just some things actors can't or aren't comfortable doing, and the industry seems to accommodate that. Funny how we can make concessions like that for abled actors, even though it has the potential to slow down production and cost extra money, but actually, it doesn't really. It's just a standard. But nah. Wheelchair reps are, that's too much. They're too hard.
Can't do it. Not today.
People also use this argument for not casting transgender actors in transgender roles. It's true that some might not want to play a trans character pre-transition, but some of them probably won't care. Every person is different. Marginalized people are not any more fragile, incompetent, or risky than anybody else. But how are we to navigate this impossible question? How can we know which ones would be fine with doing something like this?
I mean, you could just ask them.
No. It's just better to assume that they don't want to. Yeah. It's what's best. That's not to say that the roles I've mentioned in both of these videos don't present any kind of harm to disabled or disfigured actors, whether it be psychological or physical. There might be some times when it's safer for an actor with a certain disability to decline certain roles. And that's a caveat that I didn't make clear enough in my last video. I would never prioritize authentic casting over an individual's safety. No. That would be really, really bad. That was not the point I was trying to make at all, but I'm sorry it came across like that. Again, your compassion is not unwarranted in this conversation, but it should be channeled into creating a world where film and television is safe and welcoming to disfigured and disabled people, not weaponized into excluding them from it altogether. Think of the award-winning performances and stories we're being cheated out of with this approach. Exploitation is bad, but it's also totally avoidable, and forbidding people from the industry to protect them from it is... it's kind of off track. If you were nearsighted and it hurt to read, would you want someone to burn all of your books, or just help you find your glasses? But this actually brings up an interesting question. If the comments I got were any indication, people really care about the Elephant Man. For some reason. Why that one? The Phantom of the Opera. Why didn't people come for me over the Phantom of the Opera? Why the Elephant Man? I am all for Eric getting that Elphaba Wicked treatment. Like, where is that movie? When is Andrew Lloyd Webber gonna do that? That's the sequel we deserve, not Love Never Dies. I'm getting off topic. In all seriousness, people got so defensive of this movie that I thought it warranted a closer look. Maybe I'd been too quick to read the synopsis as tragic inspiration porn. Maybe there was something really unique and special in this story that was actually empowering for disfigured people. Yeah, no. David Lynch's 1980 film, The Elephant Man, tells the story of Joseph Merrick, an Englishman who lived in the late 1800s and was well known for his disfigurements. He worked as a human oddity and spent the last few years of his life at London Hospital under the primary care of Dr. Frederick Treves. The theme of this movie is that the exploitative exhibition of disability and disfigurement by abled people for personal gain is bad. The delivery of that message is what we in film studies would call, sledgehammery. Yeah, Dr. Treves, showcasing Merrick's body to London's medical and elite society, is criticized by various characters throughout the film, and the doctor comes to the conclusion that it is wrong to treat Merrick this way, because Merrick is a human being. On the surface, this sounds like a great message, but it's often contradicted, not only in how the camera interacts with Merrick, but also in the way Lynch chooses to adapt his story. It's not enough to just point at something and say, "This is wrong," while your film does that thing at almost every possible turn. First of all, Lynch never passes up an opportunity to inflict pain on Merrick in order to manipulate the audience. There's often a sadistic tinge to it as well. It's also usually done by poor people. Second, Joseph Merrick is not the hero of this movie, not on the page or on the screen. It's Treves. His development and reactions to Merrick are what the film is really about. Frankly, Merrick's emotional well-being is only of use to the story when it affects Treves. We don't even see a direct shot of Merrick's face until half an hour into the film, when a nurse walks in and very dramatically screams in horror at the sight of him. You're a nurse, for Christ's sakes! Is this how you react to, like, the sight of blood? That said, for that first half hour, we do manage to squeeze in Merrick being beaten, Treves looking horrified at Merrick's appearance, creepy shots of Merrick's silhouette, and Treves rescuing him from the evil poor guy. It's great stuff. For all the things that The Shape of Water and even Wonder don't get right, there is no doubt that Eliza and Augie are the main focus of their own stories. Lynch never allows Merrick to become anything more than a set piece, and any historical evidence that stood in the way of Merrick's reinvention as a wide-eyed feeble innocent was omitted. What's that you say? Merrick actually chose to work in the freak show circuit and was paid and treated fairly by his manager, who he had a good relationship with? No, that won't work. That might reflect badly on Treves. Let's have his manager beat and kidnap Merrick instead. Whoa, Merrick had a sense of humor, wanted to get married, and actively put aside income so he could buy a house? He needs to be childlike, so that's going in the trash. He died under ambiguous circumstances? The old better dead than disfigured and disabled ending is more dramatic. The Elephant Man was a beautiful film, and the opposite of offensive. Oh, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. There is a systemic problem with the way we tell stories about disability and disfigurement. They are rarely about disfigured or disabled people as people. They're about the tragedy and pity of disability, the inspiration found in great suffering, and how some people are really just objects to stare and laugh at. And The Elephant Man is an exceptional example of this. In the film, Merrick is not a person like you or me. He is an angelic device to inspire a cruel, abled audience. Not to do anything relevant to our time period, like donate to foundations that help people with genetic conditions or pay them fair wages. No. It's fine to just know that you wouldn't assault him if you saw him in a train station. I also just wanted to mention that there's a scene in the book Wonder where the school is going to put on a production of The Elephant Man because it's apparently way more popular in America than I realized, and a friend of Augie's advocates for the school not to do that because of Augie, so they do Our Town instead. So the book seemed to kind of get it, like, a little bit. It's not that disfigured kids need to or should be protected at all costs, but the idea that these children need these kinds of tragic films to prepare them for the real world is disgusting. Okay kids, tonight's movie is Room, because you need to know that this could happen to you. Disfigured kids probably don't have to learn that they're going to face discrimination from films like The Elephant Man because people suck.
Nobody can get their feelings hurt, ever? You are not doing these kids any favors.
Didn't you get the memo? My child is the only one allowed to be coddled. Ugh. Unfortunately, we're living in a time where this kind of thinking and behavior is encouraged, but it shouldn't be. Not by parents, and not by filmmakers. Most movies about disfigurement and disability are not concerned with representation that benefits people like Augie. The primary concern is the emotional experience of the abled viewer. Ariel Henley, an American writer with Crouzon syndrome, states in a piece for The Atlantic, "For all Wonder's feel-good appeal, it would be misguided to praise it as a story created for people like Augie and myself. Instead, it was made for those who need help understanding that people with physical differences are just like everyone else. Something that those of us living with disfigurement have known all along." This isn't always necessarily a bad thing. Earlier I admitted that my first video was mainly made for an abled viewer. Why is this different? Well, it wouldn't be as bad if we made the room for disabled and disfigured people to tell their own stories, were willing to comprehend them as more than sad inspirational things, or actually made an effort to hire them. This is not a case against abled writers including disabled and disfigured characters in their stories, because they should be. But most abled writers approach disability with the assumption that all disabled people are miserable and don't want to be disabled, which isn't the case for many people. To put it another way, cisgender women don't secretly wish we were men, we just wish that our misogynistic society treated us better. There's a lot more to the lives of disabled and disfigured people than pain and suffering, and the stories that focus on those aspects overwhelmingly lay the blame on the bad attitude of individuals, rather than our ableist institutions and inaccessible world. Casting able actors in these stories is a symptom of this cracked foundation, and it's something that needs to be fixed. But just sticking authentic actors into these stories is not going to make them not ableist. It would be difficult to find someone with Merrick's precise disfigurements to play him. Medicine has improved a lot in the nearly 160 years since Merrick was born. If he were born today, he probably wouldn't have ended up looking like he did in the 1880s. So maybe the next best thing is employing a disfigured person. Like, at all. In front of and or behind the camera. But the better question is, why? Why are we interested in continuing to tell stories like Lynch's very ableist interpretation of Joseph Merrick? Can't we just let him rest? Rethinking the stories we tell about disfigured and disabled people is another step in more ethical and authentic representation. Some of them are salvageable, and some of them are probably not. When I stated in the last video that it's impossible for an abled actor to play a disabled character better than a disabled actor could, oh boy! Oh god! Did I get a lot of upset people. People who also seem to assume that I meant that if I were to just grab a random disabled person, that they would automatically be better than a trained actor would. Which would be absurd. Come with me if you want to be a star!
How did you get in my house?
But for clarity's sake, I was referring to actors who act. Yeah. Entitlement makes you extremely self-centered, and entitled people hate being told that they can't do something, even if it hurts someone else. And abled actors are told on a pretty regular basis that they're allowed these roles. Weirdly enough, none of that makes it right. But sure, technically, yes, an abled actor has the potential to portray disability more accurately in a performance than some random disabled person. Congratulations, you won that argument. This all goes back to the idea that disability mimicry only exists because abled actors are just the best actors for a disabled role. But what are the chances that that's the case every single time? Shouldn't abled actors be an exception rather than the standard? And since abled actors are consistently deemed the best people for these roles, isn't that a clue that it's not actually an authentic portrayal of disabled and disfigured people? Think about it. Like, what if Scarlett Johansson was actually cast for the lead in the Thai cave rescue movie, and the director said that ScarJo was the perfect choice? Wouldn't we all be wondering, under what circumstances that could possibly be true? Because there are some fundamentals being completely misunderstood here. And let's not pretend that the goal of these movies is awareness or empathy. It's about winning awards and advancing careers. You also can't truly know for certain that this person is the best choice if you don't allow disabled people to audition. When I mentioned that Gaten Matarazzo shares a disfigurement with his character Dustin in Stranger Things, many people commented that Dustin's disfigurement was only added because they liked Gaten so much for the part. Yeah, I know! It's why I included it in the video! We should be doing more of that! Disabled and disfigured actors should have the access and encouragement to audition for all kinds of roles, not just those which mirror their identity. Roles can be more malleable when stuff like that doesn't drastically impact the overarching narrative. But Gaten's case is not the norm. The fact is that disabled and disfigured people are not afforded the same opportunities that abled actors are in the industry, and it's not because they're not good at their jobs, it's because of discrimination. We understand that this is a tough industry, and that it takes many auditions to land a part, but what we want is the chance to audition. Let us show you what we've got before you decide we're not right for the role. A different argument I find kind of funny is one we get a lot on this channel, given how much we talk about representation. The classic, it's just acting, slash fiction, slash a movie, slash a show, slash whatever! It doesn't matter. It matters, okay? I'm not gonna pull out the research, but it just does. Our society segregates people with disabilities and disfigurements from normal people, and for many abled people, depictions in media will probably be their most meaningful interaction with disability. And besides that, abled people ultimately made money off of these stories. And yes, I know it's show business, but this is a problem when you consider that if you're disabled and living in the US, you're about twice as likely to be unemployed, as well as twice as likely to be living in poverty. These issues don't exist in a vacuum. And it's really not that difficult or expensive to include disabled and disfigured people in your projects, especially when you have access to the kind of resources that being a Hollywood darling or a big studio allows. Jake, how much of your $30 million budget did you spend CGIing your legs off for a 2-hour movie? Mostly, the issue isn't that these movies shouldn't have been made at all, it's that they should have been made differently. Keeping in mind that disability and disfigurement is much more of a spectrum as opposed to a binary, yeah, there is a pretty decent chance that disabled and disfigured actors are going to have different requirements to make an environment accessible to them. Maybe that's a ramp, an interpreter, or making sure there's a place for a service dog to go to the bathroom. But there are any number of things to make places more accessible because there are all kinds of disabilities. And it's our responsibility to make those changes, not just as allies of that community and decent human beings, but also as people who want to make the best art possible. In a job that is all about making interesting choices, working with disabled actors not just forces you to think more creatively, it gives you a new set of tools to work with. To be perfectly frank, if you're a director and you can't figure out how to incorporate an actor's short-term memory or chronic fatigue into production, you're not just bad at your job. You're not even doing it. Ethical and authentic representation, like any civil rights issue, is a dynamic problem. It's a journey with a few obvious first steps, but it quickly becomes progressively more difficult, with more nuanced questions that can be hard to find the answers to. It's hard! It takes time! I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's the right thing to do, and that's what progress is. It's doing things like challenging a missed opportunity for representation because a director we admire basically said, "I just had a particular not deaf actress in mind for this role." Well, why? Was your arbitrary preference for this particular actor really more important here? Guillermo, I'm sorry, but that's not a good excuse when you're reinforcing an ableist system. And it's fighting against really terrible garbage like Me Before You, because it says that suicide is socially acceptable when you're disabled. That's the bare minimum. Then we get to more complicated questions. How disabled must an actor be for it to be okay to play a role like this? What qualifies as disfigured enough? Are portraying people with mental illnesses okay? Where do stutters come into it? I don't feel totally comfortable answering because, for the most part, I'm not the one who would be represented. I will say that there is a bare minimum that we are not currently meeting. Knowing that there are eventual problems shouldn't prevent us from doing the ones that are right in front of us. So when members of the autistic community say they should have cast an autistic actor for Sean Murphy because this is a very neurotypical interpretation of autism and it's damaging, and your response is, well, if we do that, then what's your solution for this specific and hypothetical thing? Then you're obstructing a conversation. And maybe you're not doing it intentionally, but now you know, and maybe don't do it. And as for what we do in those specific situations, I don't know the answers. But then again, I'm not really the one you should be asking. Thanks for watching. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to my sensitivity readers, Mike Moody, Annie Elaney, and Jazz Wrights for their feedback and counsel on these videos. Links to their work along with my entire bibliography are in the description below. I've also included other disabled and disfigured activists I follow and recommend you do the same. I hope I cleared up some questions you might have had if you watched part 1, and that your next step is actually listening to the disabled community and not asking me like I'm the expert. 'Cause I'm not. If you're so inclined, you can support us on Patreon to get early access to videos, voting privileges for future content, and other fun perks. You should hit that little bell to make sure you never miss a video, and if you're not subscribed, we hope you'll do so down below for more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, and more. One of us will see you real soon. I got those statistics! Bisexual finger guns.